Hi, everybody. This is Sherry, and I'm the co-founder of Peak. I'm very excited to have with me Chinmay, who was the founder of BukuWarung, one of the prominent fintechs within the Southeast Asia region, after having a career, I believe a decade, in different tech companies around the region. I'm very excited to just start this series where I interview different fintech founders and just see what kind of learnings they can share. So without further ado, Chinmay would love to welcome you and also hear a little bit of your own background and introduction.
Thanks, Sherry. Great to have joined here. And so I'll start with like where I was born. I'll do the other way. So I was born in Mumbai, India, in India, in a relatively very humble background. My parents were micro merchants and saw a lot of struggle during my childhood financially, and so it was a very difficult childhood. I then went to IIT Bombay in India, which kind of turned fortunes for us as a family, and I moved to Singapore after graduating, and worked at companies like I've been here 11 years in the region now, since Singapore, Southeast Asia. Did many different things in tech and product, and built a company. My most recent experience was building BukuWarung, which is a fintech in Indonesia. We focus on building payments software and lending solutions for small merchants in Indonesia. We started with Warungs, and hence the name BukuWarung. Um, and so in my journey there, we raised about 80 million in capital from, top tier Southeast Asian and global VCs. We were part of Y-Combinator as well. And we scaled the team a lot, and we scaled our many different product lines, as well as payment volumes from our merchants to multi-billion dollars in volumes. And so yeah, that was my most recent experience. It was amazing. Before that, I was one of the early product guys at Grab, and also a product leader at Carousell. At Grab, I saw amazing growth, built a lot of stuff for drivers and merchants in Indonesia as well as Southeast Asia, and a lot of payment products as well for these merchants, payment and fintech products. So that's what kind of led me to start BukuWarung in Indonesia. And so I've been here in the region. I'm kind of like grounded here. This is home. Singapore is home, and this region is home for me. I don't see myself going anywhere else, at least in the near term, from here. And yeah, thank you for having me here.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing. And one thing that I'm always really curious about is like what inspired people to get into certain careers, perhaps at a young age. So I know that you studied at a tech school and also worked at Microsoft, I believe, as one of your first jobs. Was there a tech leader or like a tech product you used that like made you feel like, okay, I really want to get into product. I want to get into engineering. Like this is what I want to do.
I think it was I mean I think it, like if I reflect back, it was a lot of chance. Like I had one of my cousin, he was in tech, you know and then he kind of pushed me to take computer science during my when I was picking which undergrad course I should go for. And I think in India, at least, even now, I think is the case that like tech and computer science and IT, and those are like usually the go-to choices. And so I picked computer science at IIT Bombay, which is probably the hardest to get into. Out of a couple of million students, you have to have to be in like the top 100 or something to be in that course. So for me, it was more that than like, oh, I really wanted to do this. Like, okay, I really wanted to learn programming. I actually didn't have a laptop until I entered my school. I didn't even have a phone.
Wow.
So I
Okay.
was, because as I said, I come from a very poor family, and so we didn't have the means to afford that. So kind of put together the money to buy a laptop once so that I had little experience with computers or programming, but picked it because that was like the best choice, and so kind of a lot of chance there and luck there. A lot of randomness there, I would say. So it was not like a, but then I think once I was there, it was amazing, and I think learned a lot. I think it wires your brain in a certain way as a engineer, software engineer. So I enjoyed that, and my first job was I did a few internships and a couple of jobs before I realized that okay, I like tech, I like coding, but I think I would want to move into something more customer facing. So I moved into product, and my first role was at Grab, which was as a product manager.
Yeah, that's actually almost like great timing that you started working at Grab during that period when so many of the big consumer apps in Southeast Asia, like ride hailing, e-commerce, just like grew exponentially right during that time period. And it's not just about the growth, but it's also about the impact it had and how people just live their day-to-day life, right? How to get from point A to point B, how to get food, or how to communicate. So do you have any interesting stories around things that you tested as a product manager to figure out how to grow and scale Grab at the earlier stages?
I think a lot of things, right? I think I was there about 3 years, and it was like rapid growth there, right? Things grew by like 21x in my time there. So like at all metrics, right? In terms of number of people we had in the company, in terms of top line volumes that we did, in terms of like the capital that Grab had raised. So about, pretty like rapid growth. And so I was quite lucky to witness that growth, and I was all across Southeast Asia, and every month I was in like Indonesia or in Thailand or in Philippines or Vietnam, like just going around talking to customers, talking to our business teams there, stakeholders there on the ground. And I think, yeah, we ended up building a lot of things and almost like creating some ecosystems which did not exist. Our founders were pretty visionary in terms of like, and visionary, but also know how to execute, right? Because that's usually Southeast Asia is so fragmented that I think building out products for one market does not mean that it necessarily scales to other markets. So for us, it was like, so the way we built products internally was like, hey, we will build it for Indonesia. We'll go there first and kind of see what works. And we are in Singapore anyways. I was based here, so we know what to build for Singapore, and everything else kind of falls in between. And we try to localize and customize. So that's how we did. And I think Singapore usually or Indonesia usually was like a test market. They'll try to make sure that it works for these two countries, and then I think rest of it falls into place more or less. Yeah.
Yeah, gotcha. Was there anything that maybe you worked on that was like a specific program or like an experiment that worked very well, or are there any are there any ones that you tried that also didn't work as well? Because we have some of those as well.
I think what worked really well, I think it was more. I think what worked very well. Like what created a lot of impact one of the products that I built was driver onboarding platform. So initially Grab used to onboard drivers with pen, paper, Excel sheets, a lot of manual tracking, and kind of similar to what people might be doing right now to manage their finances. And what we built was was a digitized version of like fully streamlined version of like document uploads and information upload, and kind of tailored it to every market, right? So Indonesia, there's a different regulation to onboard drivers. You need different kind of documents. Thailand is different. Vietnam is different. So we kind of built a very flexible module for collecting that driver information and kind of having that full workflow of like backend team to kind of look at all the documents, verify, see if there is any fraud happening there or like duplication or gaming, abuse. A lot of these problems were there, which we couldn't track because everything was manual. So it was like very hard to block drivers. It was very one-off. We're not building capabilities, right? We're just kind of doing it, like issue by issue, which is not good. So built that whole system, and so that worked well. And what really created impact was when I think Grab acquired Kudo for about like $100 million, which is Kudo is like an agent network, which was later rebranded to Grab Kiosk, and uh, basically they had a few 100,000 agents in Indonesia, all over Indonesia, right? In like even in the remotest parts, which is an amazing network that they built. And now, as part of Grab, one of their responsibilities was what we did was we integrated the driver onboarding APIs into the Kudo agent app, and then Kudo agents could themselves like now onboard their neighbors as drivers, or like kind of merchants, or stuff like that, right? So because we had that platform and kind of already built, it kind of scaled very easily. We just had APIs as well, which kind of scaled easily. And then I think in the first year of acquisition of Kudo, I think we ended up acquiring maybe about 500,000 ish drivers, which is a lot in Indonesia, right? So it kind of rapidly helped Grab to kind of get market share, because supply is everything in the ride hailing space, in the food delivery space. So I think it kind of really helped Grab kind of get that edge, because there were three players at that point of time: Grab, Uber, Gojek, and so yeah, it was. I think I felt quite good about building that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Anything that didn't work during your time or didn't work as well?
Didn't work. I think. Yeah, I mean, I think some of the like experiments we did, like some markets had Indonesia was great in adoption, but like a similar solution for driver onboarding did not take. I think if I remember correctly, it did not get initial adoption or buy-in from the stakeholders, because I think that the volume of drivers onboarded was just not enough. Like they didn't care. It's like not really, because Thailand was a relatively small market compared to. I think the taxi systems were really good, and kind of, yeah, I think it was one of the lagging markets for Grab. So I think I didn't see much adoption there, the systems that we have built. Although it was good, it was kind of scalable and modular, and but the extra benefit of moving was like very minimal.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I think
kind of
that
adoption there, yeah.
Yeah, I think that sometimes goes to show that sometimes people think of Southeast Asia as like this one monolithic region, but some things that work in one country, one place doesn't always translate. So there's a
Yeah.
difficulty in just thinking about some of the local nuances when you roll initiatives out, especially for a company like Grab that kind of spans across the board. I actually want to now get a bit more into why you decided to start BukuWarung. Like, what was the inspiration to move from a career within larger and also medium-sized corporations to actually going off and starting a company?
I think like the most exciting thing part of my career was like in Grab and also in Carousell, and both of the companies were not that large when I was there. I think I was like one of the, I think, eighth product manager there, and now I think Grab probably has a couple of hundred. So it's like scaled so much. So now it's a big organization, but back then it was not that big, and same for Carousell. And I think I enjoyed that early stage, product building and company building process. And so one was that, and second was my mentors pushed me to like go start the company instead of looking for another role or in an early stage startup, right? So because they saw that I'm enjoying this early stage, kind of like just launching stuff, going on the ground, hustling, getting adoption. So I was enjoying that, and then I think they saw that okay, I could actually go and end up building a company. I'm a product guy. I understand. I know how to work with tech. I know how to talk to customers and figure out the business. So I think they saw that more than I did back then, and they kind of pushed me to start something. So that's how I ended up building a company. And specifically, BukuWarung was an idea that was closer to our heart, and the reason was like as I mentioned earlier, like my parents were come from a poor family. My parents were micro merchants, so my dad was like a footwear shop owner at one point of time, which failed as a business. We ended up in a small amount of debt. small now, but back then it was big, looked big. And my mom was like a home-based tailor plus a housewife, so just kind of doing that to meet ends. So I saw that it's like a lot of struggle. There were a few other ideas that we had, if I'm on, like, just being very transparent, but we kind of picked this one because felt like, okay, if we end up creating with impact for small merchants, micro merchants in Indonesia, then I think we'll feel good about ourselves, and yeah, and even helping them in a small way. And one of the, I think, biggest challenges we saw was like credit. Even at Grab, I saw that cash flow is a big problem for drivers, merchants. So I had a similar experience working. I had experience working with this same segment of users, which also helped. Okay, that founder market fit, right, in terms of the idea we had. So I think kind of made that call. Okay, let's build this. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love hearing about how your own personal background, I think, led to this particular problem that you wanted to solve, right? Because people always say your product might change, how it looks when you first start out versus how it looks at later stages. That might change, right? But feeling really connected to a mission or a certain person or persons that you're trying to solve for, I think, is one of the most important things when you're thinking about building a company. And so one thing I love to also ask for founders is how did you like get your first 100 customers, and what was that customer discovery process, right? So you have maybe a beta test, or you have maybe a list of people that you already maybe worked with before for previous roles, right? And then you iterate on prototypes until you get a product that you're able to launch to a broader base. So I would love to hear what your first 100 customer experience was with BukuWarung.
I think first 100 customers, I was literally just on the ground in Jakarta and Jabodetabek, right? Extended parts of Jakarta. And we did a lot of workshops with, so I just basically pulled in my Indonesian friends and got some translators, and kind of, my Bahasa is, I can understand very, very rudimentary. Can get around if I, just basic stuff, but I cannot understand like the level 2, level 3 questions and answers, right? So pulled in my friends, kind of went around talking to like the Warungs, the small shops around, and also we organized some workshops for different kind of home-based merchants, and So I think like we spoke to like a few hundred merchants in the first 3 to 6 months of while we were building the app, and then we just kind of narrowed down into, there were so many problems, like it's a wide space kind of to build for accounting problems that they have, or even inventory problems that they have, or cash flow problems, or payment problems, or there are many like issues that they face day to day. And so we were like, hey, what is the fastest thing that we could launch? And it was like accounting. And then even accounting was like there's so many parts to accounting, and how do we simplify it? Because we saw that these merchants only use WhatsApp most, and then maybe some social media apps. That's it. Like they don't use any app for like managing their business. And so we had to make it as simple as WhatsApp. That's something that I kind of saw, that looking at merchants' behavior when they're showing us their phone and kind of what they do, kind of that's what we realized that. So we made our first version of app for a very simple use case, which kind of applied to many different categories of merchants, which was like a credit debit use case, and then also like a basic transaction use case, like adding sales transaction. So we launched these first 2 use cases, and I was like just sending APKs I had all these merchants on my WhatsApp, like one-on-one. I just kind of sent them the APK. Some of them ended up using it, some of them didn't use it, some of them ended up becoming our earliest customers. So there was a lot of hustle in getting the first 100 merchants. And I think once we launched on Play Store, it was like slightly easier because we started seeing some organic traffic, and we also did some little bit of digital marketing to kind of get like 25,000 to 50,000 first merchants to use our app.
And What would you say was the number one thing that like the merchants found most valuable in using BukuWarung that they didn't have before when they were doing a more I guess informal or pen and paper way of managing their businesses?
What was the most useful thing? In the early days, I think it was, so there were three things that they found useful. One was, I think it saved them 4 to 6 hours every week. So when you have given credit, and some merchants' nature of business was that they had like 100 loyal customers, and they in their neighborhood, and these are repeat customers. They would come and pick up stuff from the shop, not pay, and then the guy just writes down against their account on a book, right? And then they will come back and also pay back in tranches, not like the whole settle. So he has to kind of keep a tally of like what's going on. So it kind of saved them 4 to 6 hours every week. They would spend the weekend doing that, and they didn't have to do that anymore. Second was, I think I saw some books which was like damaged, like coffee spilled or like kind of half burnt or like wet, and then the guy is just kind of looking at papers, and I'm like, and some merchants actually lost their books or kind of damaged it, and they couldn't track the money, and now they have lost that money basically because they cannot claim. They don't know how much the customer owns to them. So I think those are like a few problems that we solved, and also we made the app very like lightweight. One of the things that we saw was like this internet, at least in 2019, was not that cheap, and in Indonesia, and they would often turn off their data, just to save bandwidth, and then kind of turn it on. And so a lot of the other apps kind of stop working, right, when you turn off the internet. But we made sure that and they were very worried about this entry loss, because trust issue was the biggest issue. Where can they trust that this app, which is supposed to give them their income, like essentially track their expenses and income and collect the credit back, can they do that? Can they feel secure about adding everything and putting in the work? So we made sure that we had like a very solid ledger where even if the phone is offline, we kind of cache it on the phone, and in the back end we kind of sync it up when they come online with very little data. So our app was 7 MB if I remember, and that's a super lightweight app for them to download and kind of use. So did a few of these things, optimizations over the first 3 to 6 months after launch, to make sure that our adoption goes up and kind of they find it easier to use.
Yeah, absolutely. This actually reminds me of a little bit of work I did back in Google Pay. This was a few years ago, but this was back when GPay actually launched its merchant app for, I guess they'll be called Wallas instead, not Warungs like in Indonesia. But I remember I was actually going through it was like a few markets in Chennai as well as Bangalore, just watching how people would onboard and use the app, right? A lot of times it's a exercise in empathy to understand like what kind of fears people may have if they're not necessarily used to tech for this specific case, right? And so when people come across errors, instead of going into maybe like a debugging mode, there's a kind of fear of panic, right? And so what are those panic points and how do you solve for them? So this is something that I worked on a few years ago as well, but we really do have to understand it from the emotional point of view, especially for people who are maybe new to using certain tech for use cases.
I think kind of similar story here. It was like addressing more the underlying kind of fear or trust issue that they had, and you address it with different solution and then kind of get them to adopt, because adoption is the biggest challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And you all actually raised, I think, one of the largest rounds ever in Southeast Asia for startups. You were able to raise $80 million for BukuWarung, which is incredible. Do you have any lessons for founders around fundraising? It's I'd say it's definitely a rite of passage for everybody. It's one of those things like you don't know until you do it, and when you do it, you feel like you have no idea what the hell you're doing. At least that's how I felt maybe in the beginning. But what are some things you can share with folks that are perhaps doing their own companies and thinking about fundraising?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're quite fortunate that investors trusted us. Our angel investors, as well as our seed round investors, as well as later stage investors. I think there was a lot of trust in what we were building and the larger problem that we were solving. And thankfully, after a lot of hustle, we managed to raise that much capital. Um, and so I'm grateful for that. And there were a lot of lessons along the way. I think, especially, I've been a advisor as well as an angel investor in like about 40 startups while I was building the company, and then post my journey there. So I've helped a bunch of founders kind of raise their seed rounds, Series A rounds, get them like to understand the mindset of a typical venture capital investor, right? And So I think like few lessons there. Like one is just like when you have to think from their perspective. I know when you're building a company, you have to think from your customer's perspective, but when you're raising money, you have to think from your investor's perspective. Like they are the ones you are selling your vision, mission, and your story to. And a lot of storytelling is needed. Even though you have traction, I've seen founders who have good traction and they're not able to storytell. And then, so that's where there is some trust struggle. And then, like, obviously, you need to have a clear story and like why this idea and this traction kind of justifies what the round that you're raising, and what does this look like in 12 months, 18 months, 24 months from now. So how does the investor kind of multiply their capital, right? That's what they want. Like they, at least at a high level, right? Like they want to see that multiplication of whatever capital they've invested. So how does this become 3x, 5x, 10x, in more time from there? And so that's how you have to kind of work backwards from there and think like, okay, what does this mean for my business? I would say like picking good board members can make a big difference. You have to do like 3 reference checks at least on if someone is asking you for a board seat. And I think to get one of the other tactics was like to get the best offers, you have to have at least 2 term sheets. So best offer does not mean high valuation, or it could mean like better terms and more like founder friendly terms. And so you have to always watch out and balance. You don't need to always pick the highest valuation. If it comes with a lot of restrictions or kind of other kind of terms that you have to give away and kind of control that you have to give away. So it's always a tricky balance that you have to have. And higher valuation does not always mean good, so don't go for like the highest valuation that you can get. I think you have to optimize for good people on your cap table. And one of the I think lessons also is that angel investors or like individual investors on our cap table were like very, very helpful. And I think the size of the check size did not correlate to the amount that they to the help that they had or the impact that they had on our company, right? Like so like for example, I could say that one of our angel investors was critical for us to raise a 60 million later stage round, right? And he had invested a very small amount. So I think he like, but like I mean that just goes to show that okay, it does not matter, right? You have to have good people who believe in your story, and then hope and kind of ask the right questions and get the right support from them. And and optimize for a good cap table, good people is what I would say, instead of just like one large investor on your cap table or 2 large investors on a cap table, and that's
Yeah. No, I think you bring up really great points. There's something that someone recently like said or termed, but like you should think about like fundraising almost like hiring. And instead of thinking like, oh, I'm just trying to get the money, it's like who would you want to hire in advisory positions and board positions? Who did you want to join in your journey? and kind of be part of that, right? Versus, just a capital allocation one. So I think that does shift your perspective a little bit. The other part that I really like that you mentioned is how people don't focus maybe enough about, again, the emotional or the storytelling part, and focus maybe too much on numbers and traction, which, again, you do need to have the data there, of course, but unless you wrap it in a story that kind of speaks to someone at the core, right? Like, give them a reason why they should care about your problem. It's really hard to kind of cut through the noise because there are just so many good companies and with good traction around, right? So how do you stand out?
Yep. Exactly. Yeah.
And at last, few questions, but the startup journey can be pretty hard, lonely, challenging sometimes, and you already alluded to the fact that you have some mentors that you go to speak to. We also actually met through founder community / organization as well. But I'm just wondering, like, how do you kind of get through the journey? Like, what's your support system, whether it's the people around you or perhaps even habits that you build for yourself?
Oh, I think this is not talked about as often. I think people just kind of dive right into being a founder, and that's what I did for my first 18 to 24 months. It's just like kind of crazy executing and working like 7 days a week, no end in sight, and it was exciting. But then after that, you get burned out, right? Especially as you scale, and like there's a lot to manage. And so I think, like, in my case, I was quite fortunate. I had my family, although I didn't see them for 3 years in COVID. I was kind of remote. We built the whole company remotely during COVID. So I was kind of in a lockdown. I had my partner who I kind of got support from her. I got support from my family. I was regularly calling them, and kind of they knew what's happening. A few good founder friends and advisors, and just personal friends that go long back were also like kind of just talking out stuff when things are difficult. And obviously your co-founders are also the strong support system that you have. Like, I think you need to have all of these 3-4 pillars to kind of sets of people to kind of have like a holistic view of what's going on. And my executive coach was also later stages. He was quite helpful. And so yeah, I mean, I would say it's a lot of people who were helpful, and I'm grateful for them along the way. And one thing that I started doing was I started working out more, going to the gym more, and kind of meditating more. 3 to 5 times a week, doing both of these activities, right? Just to kind of stay sane, because some of the pressure is high and it kind of gets you, and the stakes are very high, and you kind of you have to kind of keep your cool. Yeah, almost always in front of the team, in front of investor, in front of the market, like this. But yeah, you're kind of going through. So I think you have to just keep sane, and that really helped me. The people plus my own kind of process around.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that. And I agree that it's something that people don't always talk about, because I sometimes feel like there's a tendency for founders to have to feel less vulnerable in front of people, right? Like, you've got your shit together and everything, but we're all human. We all have physical needs, health, mental health needs that we have to take care of to make sure that we're the best leaders for our company. We're best representing our customers when we're building our products, right? So I think it's really easy to forget those. I can't say I'm always great about it as well. Like, I had to cut a habit of working every single day for a couple months as well, because I was just starting to feel it. So it's a good reminder that it's not always about, burning yourself to the ground, trying to do everything all the time, but taking care of yourself as a person, as a human with a pulse, right, as well.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Last question I'll ask, since we talked a lot about, your past experience, your background, your journey with BukuWarung, but I'm really interested to hear, what kind of trends or what kind of companies or areas that you're kind of excited about for Southeast Asia going forward. You do a lot of angel investing, you've looked at a lot of companies, so I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts here, but I'm kind of curious, what you would be kind of excited about.
I think, yeah, I have I think credit is always an exciting space. I think the opportunity is still there, like to kind of give out credit faster, cheaper, underwrite better. So that I think is especially for the underserved segments, it's still a wide open opportunity. I feel, although a lot of progress has been made in the last 5 years since I started BukuWarung. And so that's one thing that I always like. I'm an investor in a bunch of companies, lending companies, companies in the region, in Thailand, in Indonesia, and so on. One of the other things that kind of is spaces that is I feel is getting excited. I'm an investor in one of the companies as well, which is property tokenization. So I think so tokenizing that and kind of selling property fractionally, right, and kind of generating yields from that is a So I think that's something that I'm also quite kind of watching out, and I'm also invested in one of the companies that is doing that. It's called Goro. That's happening in Indonesia, but I think there's opportunity in the region for that. I mean, I can talk on and on. There's so many things that I think can they can look different in the next 5 years, but I think it's
Yeah, for sure. Great. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Chinmay. Thanks for sharing your founder journey with BukuWarung, all the stuff that you did at Grab beforehand. I always really enjoy these chats with folks that are building in fintech specifically, because I feel like there's always something that I learn from it as well. And sometimes it's about product and more tactical things, but other times it's actually more just around maybe the more human parts of being a founder, and seeing if there's something that I can also do to make this more enjoyable along the process.
Yeah, for sure. I think I love talking to you, and I think it was thanks for having me, asking great questions, and it's always like a pleasure interacting and sharing. I'm kind of re-educating myself, or like what I did good and what I did not so good. So it's always a pleasure doing these conversations.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks. You too.
All right. See ya.